People are broadcasting their thoughts and feelings constantly. You just have to know where to look. Most of us go through life missing these signals. We misread situations. We get blindsided by people we thought we understood. But what if you could pick up on the subtle cues that reveal what someone's actually thinking before they say a word? The truth is, human behavior follows patterns, and once you learn to spot them, reading people becomes almost automatic. You'll notice things in conversations that most people completely miss. You'll understand motivations. You'll catch when someone's being dishonest. You'll know how to connect with people on a deeper level. This isn't about manipulation, it's about awareness. It's about having better conversations, making smarter decisions about who to trust, and navigating relationships with real insight instead of guessing. Over the next few minutes, we're breaking down 7 psychological tricks that let you read people accurately. Some of these are about body language. Some are about listening in a completely different way. Some are about understanding what psychologists call micro-expressions. Those tiny facial movements that flash across someone's face for less than a second before they control their expression. The first trick is about the eyes. Eyes are called the window to the soul for a reason. When someone's lying, their eye contact patterns change. They either look away more frequently, or they overcompensate by maintaining too much eye contact. But there's more to it than that. The direction someone looks when they're thinking tells you what part of their brain they're using. Look to the left, and they're typically accessing memory. Look to the right, and they're often constructing something new. These aren't hard rules, but they're reliable patterns. The second trick involves the pause. Most people rush to fill silence. But when you ask someone a question and they pause before answering, that pause is information. A longer pause often means they're choosing their words carefully. They might be deciding how much truth to tell you, or they're formulating something they haven't fully thought through yet. The pause reveals processing, and processing reveals stakes. The third trick is about baseline behavior. Before you can spot when someone's acting differently, you need to know how they normally act. Watch someone in a comfortable conversation. That's their baseline. Then when the conversation gets uncomfortable, or you ask them something sensitive, watch for deviations from that baseline. The deviations matter more than any single behavior. The fourth trick is reading clusters, not single gestures. One crossed arm doesn't mean someone's defensive. One hand touch doesn't mean attraction. But when multiple signals point in the same direction, crossed arms plus turned away posture plus minimal eye contact, that's a cluster. Clusters are reliable, single gestures are noise. The fifth trick involves the mouth. A genuine smile engages the muscles around the eyes. A fake smile is just the mouth. This is called the Duchenne marker. When you see a real smile, the person genuinely feels positive emotion. When you don't see those eye muscles engage, the smile's performative. The sixth trick is about breathing and energy. Stress changes breathing. Excitement changes breathing. Deception often involves held breath or shallow breathing. Watch someone's shoulders and chest. Are they breathing normally, or has their breathing pattern shifted? That shift signals something's changed in their internal state. The seventh trick we'll explore is about what people do with their hands and feet. Hands and feet are the hardest parts of the body to control consciously. Someone might control their facial expression perfectly, but their feet will point toward the exit if they want to leave. Their hands will fidget if they're anxious. The extremities leak truth. These 7 tricks work together. None of them works in isolation. But when you start layering them, when you're watching baseline, clusters, micro-expressions, eye direction, pauses, breathing, and hand placement all at once, you start seeing people clearly. Let's go deeper into each one. The first trick is baseline behavior. Most people think everyone acts the same way, but that's wrong. Your baseline is how you naturally exist when you're relaxed and unstressed. Some people talk with their hands constantly. Some people sit completely still. Some people make eye contact. Some people look away. None of these things mean anything by themselves. What matters is the deviation. If someone normally gestures a lot and suddenly their hands go completely still, that's information. If someone who usually avoids eye contact suddenly locks in on you, that's information. If a quiet person starts talking rapidly, that's information. You have to establish the baseline first before you can read the deviation. Here's how you do it. Spend the first few minutes of any conversation just observing. Ask them easy questions. How was your day? What do you do for work? Where are you from? Their answers don't matter. What matters is how they answer. Watch their posture. Watch their hand position. Watch their facial expressions. Watch their eye movement. This is their normal state. Once you know their baseline, everything else becomes readable. When they deviate from it, they're telling you something. Maybe they're uncomfortable. Maybe they're excited. Maybe they're lying. But you won't know which until you compare it to their baseline. The second trick is clustering. Never, and I mean never, read a single behavior in isolation. A crossed arm doesn't mean someone is defensive. They might just be cold. A lack of eye contact doesn't mean someone is dishonest. They might have social anxiety. A pause doesn't mean someone is thinking of a lie. They might just be thoughtful. But when you see multiple behaviors together, the picture becomes clear. If someone has crossed arms and their jaw is tight, and they're leaning back and they're looking away, that's a cluster that suggests defensiveness or discomfort. If someone's eyes are darting around and their breathing is shallow, and their fingers are tapping, and they're shifting their weight, that's a cluster that suggests anxiety or deception. Always look for clusters. One behavior is noise. 3 or 4 behaviors pointing the same direction is a signal. This is how you separate what's real from what's random. The third trick is micro-expressions. These are facial expressions that last less than a second. They're involuntary. You can't control them. When someone feels a real emotion, it flashes across their face for a fraction of a second before they suppress it. If you're watching carefully, you'll see it. Someone might tell you they're happy about something, while their face flashes anger for a split second. Someone might say they agree with you, while their face shows doubt. These micro-expressions reveal the truth underneath the words. They're the cracks in the facade. The problem is they're fast. You have to be looking. You have to be paying attention. You can't be thinking about your response. You can't be distracted. You have to be fully present, watching their face like you're studying a work of art. When you develop this skill, you start seeing what people actually feel, not what they're pretending to feel. And once you see that gap between the mask and the reality, everything changes. You start noticing patterns. The person who says they're fine, but their jaw tightens. The colleague who claims they're excited about the project, but their shoulders drop when you mention it. These micro-expressions last only a fraction of a second, but they're honest. They're involuntary. Your conscious mind can't control your face fast enough to hide the truth. Here's the thing, though. Most people never develop this skill because they're too busy talking. They're waiting for their turn. They're formulating their response instead of absorbing what's actually happening in front of them. Real listening is radical. It's uncomfortable because it requires you to be vulnerable. You have to admit you don't have all the answers. You have to sit with silence. You have to let the other person fill the space. When you do this, people reveal themselves. Not because you asked the right question, but because you created the right environment. You became safe. You became someone worth talking to, and that's when the real tells emerge. The hesitation before they answer, the way their voice changes when they talk about certain topics, the subjects they avoid entirely. There's also the principle of baseline behavior. Everyone has their normal. Some people are naturally animated. Some are quiet and reserved. Some fidget constantly. Some sit perfectly still. You can't read someone by comparing them to a standard. You have to know their baseline first. What does this specific person look like when they're comfortable, when they're telling the truth, when they're relaxed? Once you know that, you can spot the deviation. The deviation is where the information lives. If an animated person suddenly goes quiet, that means something. If a still person starts fidgeting, that means something. If someone who usually makes eye contact suddenly looks away, that means something. But you only catch these shifts if you've been paying attention, if you know what normal looks like for them. This is why first meetings are tricky. You don't have a baseline yet. You don't know if they're nervous because they're lying, or because they're always nervous around new people. This is why the best interrogators spend time building rapport before asking the important questions. They're not being nice. They're gathering data. They're establishing what this person looks like when they're at ease. Start practicing this today. Pick someone you interact with regularly. Spend one conversation just observing. Don't try to read them. Don't jump to conclusions. Just watch. Notice what they do with their hands. Notice where their eyes go. Notice how they breathe. Notice the rhythm of their speech. Do this for a week, and you'll start seeing the baseline. Then you'll start seeing the deviations. Then you'll start understanding what's really happening beneath the words. Once you've got that baseline locked in, you can start reading the micro-expressions. These are the tiny facial movements that flash across someone's face in less than a second. They happen before the person even realizes they're showing you how they really feel. Anger, disgust, fear, joy. They all leak out in these micro-moments if you know where to look. The key is the eyes and the corners of the mouth. When someone's genuinely happy, their eyes crinkle. The muscles around the eyes actually contract. A fake smile doesn't do that. A fake smile is just the mouth. So when someone tells you they're fine but their eyes stay flat and dead, you've got your answer right there. Now here's where it gets interesting. People's bodies are constantly trying to escape situations they don't want to be in. Watch the feet. If someone's feet are pointing toward the door, while their face is pointing at you, their body's already left the conversation. Their torso might be turned away even if they're making eye contact. These aren't accidents. The body votes first, and the face votes second. Breathing patterns tell you about emotional state too. When someone's stressed or lying, their breathing gets shallow and fast. When they're calm and telling the truth, it's deeper and slower. You can hear this in their voice. Stressed voices get higher and tighter. Relaxed voices sit lower in the chest. This is why some people sound nervous, even when they're saying confident things. Their body knows the truth. Here's another layer, incongruence. This is when someone's words don't match their body. They say they're excited, but their shoulders are slumped. They say they agree, but they're shaking their head slightly. They say they're listening, but they're checking their phone. Incongruence is where the real information lives. The body always tells the truth. The words are just the story they're trying to sell you. Start paying attention to how people hold tension too. Tense shoulders, clenched jaw, tight hands. These are signs of stress or discomfort. Some people hold it in their neck, some in their stomach, some in their face. Once you know where someone holds their tension, you can read their emotional state by watching that spot. You don't even need to see their face. The rhythm of speech matters more than most people realize. When someone speeds up, they're either excited or anxious. When they slow down, they're either thinking hard or being careful. Pauses matter. Long pauses before answering a question usually mean the person's deciding what to say, rather than remembering what happened. There's a difference between thinking and constructing. All of this builds on itself. You're not looking for one signal. You're looking for patterns. One raised eyebrow means nothing, but raised eyebrows combined with a tightened jaw and feet pointed toward the exit. That's a story. That's data. That's you actually understanding what's happening in the room, instead of just hearing what people want you to believe. The tricky part is that people are inconsistent. Someone might say they're fine while their body's screaming they want to leave. So you have to become a pattern detective. You're not looking for one tell. You're building a baseline. Here's what that means in practice. When you first talk to someone, pay attention to their normal state. How do they stand? How fast do they talk? What's their resting facial expression? This is their baseline. It's their neutral. Everything else is deviation. Once you know their baseline, changes become obvious. If someone's usually animated and suddenly goes still, something shifted. If they normally make eye contact and suddenly they don't, that's information. You're not mind reading. You're just noticing when someone stops being themselves. The second layer is context. A person sweating in a job interview means something different than a person sweating at the gym. A closed posture during a breakup conversation is expected. A closed posture when you're supposedly having fun together is a red flag. You have to read the environment. This is where most people fail. They see one signal and think they've cracked the code. They see someone cross their arms and assume they're defensive. But maybe the room's cold. Maybe they're comfortable that way. Maybe they're just listening. Context kills false positives. Here's the practical move. When you notice a deviation from someone's baseline, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what changed? Second, when did it change? Third, what happened right before it changed? That sequence matters. Someone's talking fine about their job, then you mention their boss, and suddenly their jaw tightens. That's not random. The boss mentioned triggered something. Now you know that's a sensitive area. You're not invading their privacy. You're just noticing what they're already broadcasting. The real skill is staying curious without being obvious. You can't stare at someone's face like you're analyzing them. That makes them self-conscious, and self-consciousness changes their baseline. You just notice while you're naturally in conversation. You listen, you watch, you remember. Most people are too busy thinking about what they're going to say next to actually observe the person in front of them. So the moment you start actually paying attention, you're already ahead. You're already reading signals that most people miss entirely. And here's the thing, people want to be understood. When you pick up on these patterns, when you notice the shift in their energy, when you ask about the thing they're clearly uncomfortable with, they feel seen. They feel like someone actually gets it. That's powerful. That's how you build real connection. So stop looking for magic tricks. Stop memorizing gestures. Start building baselines. Start noticing deviations. Start asking what changed and why. That's how you actually read people. Not through some secret code. Through simple, consistent attention. The 6th trick is about micro-expressions. And this is where baseline reading gets dangerous if you're not careful. A micro-expression is a facial movement that lasts less than half a second. It's the flash of emotion someone can't control before they lock it down. Anger, disgust, fear, joy, they all leak through. But here's the trap. You've probably seen those crime shows where someone catches a micro-expression and solves the case. Real life doesn't work that way. Micro-expressions are real, yes. The science is solid, but they're not reliable tells, not alone. And if you start hunting for them, you'll see what you want to see. Your brain is pattern-seeking. It will find micro-expressions that aren't there. The actual value of micro-expressions is different. They're useful when you already know something is off, when your baseline is broken, when you've noticed a deviation. Then a micro-expression becomes one more data point. It's context, not proof. Here's how this actually works in practice. Someone tells you they're fine. Everything in their baseline says they're not fine. Their voice is tighter. Their posture is smaller. Their eye contact is different. Then you catch a flash of sadness across their face. That micro-expression isn't telling you they're sad. You already knew something was wrong. The micro-expression is just confirming what the rest of their body already told you. This is why people who obsess over micro-expressions usually get it wrong. They're looking for the smoking gun when the real information is in the whole picture. The tone, the timing, the consistency, the deviation from normal. The smarter approach is this. Don't hunt for micro-expressions. Let them happen naturally. Keep your attention on the person as a whole. When you're actually listening, actually present, you'll catch the flickers without trying. Your peripheral awareness will pick them up, and because you've built a baseline, you'll know what they mean. This ties back to what we said before. You're not decoding a secret language. You're noticing when someone changes. Micro-expressions are just one way people change. Sometimes it's the most obvious change. Sometimes it's the least obvious. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. Some people are better at controlling their faces. Some people's emotions don't show up there. Some people are just flat affect. That's normal. That's their baseline. The mistake is assuming that reading people means catching them in a lie or uncovering hidden emotions. Sometimes it just means understanding how someone operates, what they care about, what makes them uncomfortable, what they need from you. That's the real skill. Not catching the micro-expression. Understanding the person. And here's where most people miss the mark. They think understanding someone means you have to be a mind reader. You don't. You just have to pay attention to patterns. People are creatures of habit. They repeat the same behaviors, the same word choices, the same physical responses over and over again. Once you know someone's baseline, any deviation from it becomes meaningful. If your coworker usually makes eye contact but suddenly looks away when discussing a specific project, that shift matters. Not because she's lying necessarily, but because something about that topic triggered a change in her normal behavior. This is called establishing a baseline, and it's one of the most underrated tools in reading people. You can't interpret a micro-expression if you don't know what that person's face looks like when they're relaxed. You can't catch a lie if you don't know how they normally speak. The second pattern to watch for is consistency across contexts. How does someone behave at a party versus one-on-one? In front of authority figures versus peers? We all code switch. We all adjust ourselves depending on the room. But the core of who someone is tends to remain stable. Someone who's genuinely confident will carry that confidence across different settings, even if the expression of it changes. Someone who's insecure will find ways to protect themselves everywhere, even if the defense mechanisms look different. This matters because it helps you separate performance from authenticity. Everyone performs to some degree, but authentic traits have a consistency that fake ones don't. Fake confidence might show up in a boardroom but disappear in a vulnerable conversation. Real confidence holds steady because it's not dependent on the audience. The third pattern is how people treat people who can't do anything for them. This is the ultimate tell. We all have a version of ourselves we show to people who matter to us professionally or socially. But how someone treats a waiter, a junior employee, someone they'll never see again, that's who they actually are. Their behavior toward people with no power over them reveals their actual values, not the values they claim to have, the ones they actually live by. These three patterns work together. Baseline behavior tells you what's normal for someone. Consistency across contexts shows you what's stable versus situational. And how they treat people who can't benefit them shows you their actual character. Combine those three observations, and you've got a much clearer picture of who someone really is than any single micro-expression could ever give you. The deeper skill here is patience. Real reading of people isn't fast. It requires you to actually know someone over time. It requires multiple interactions, different contexts, different stakes. It requires you to watch and listen more than you speak. Most people skip this part because it feels slower than looking for tells or tricks. But it's more accurate, it's more useful, and it actually works. So here's what you need to remember. Reading people isn't about becoming a human lie detector. It's not about catching someone in a gotcha moment. It's about building genuine understanding. The 7 tricks we covered, the micro-expressions, the baseline behavior, the cluster patterns, the verbal inconsistencies, the eye contact shifts, the body language contradictions, and the long-term observation, they all point to the same thing. People are broadcasting their inner state constantly. You just have to learn the language. But here's the trap most people fall into. They learn one signal and think they've cracked the code. Someone looks away and they assume deception. Someone touches their face and they think anxiety. That's not reading people, that's guessing. And guessing will fail you when it matters most. The real skill is integration. You watch the micro-expression. You check it against their baseline. You look for clusters of behavior, not single tells. You listen to what they're actually saying and what they're not saying. You notice when their words and their body are having different conversations. And you do this over time, in different situations, with different emotional stakes. That's when reading people stops being a party trick and becomes a genuine advantage. In negotiations, in relationships, in job interviews, in everyday conversations where you need to know if someone is being straight with you or if they're just telling you what you want to hear. The people who are best at this, the negotiators, the therapists, the great leaders, they're not looking for gotchas. They're building maps. They're collecting data points. They're testing their theories across multiple interactions. They're willing to be wrong and adjust. That's the mindset shift that matters. Stop hunting for the smoking gun. Start building a complete picture. And one more thing. The better you get at reading others, the more responsibility you have to use it well. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding. It's about having more information so you can respond more thoughtfully, communicate more effectively, and build stronger connections. So start small. Pick one person you interact with regularly. For the next week, just observe. Watch their baseline. Notice when it shifts. See if you can spot patterns. Don't try to catch them in anything. Just understand them better. That's your real takeaway. Reading people is a learnable skill. And like any skill, it gets better with deliberate practice. Start today.